Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. There is a better way to practice architecture. When you build a thriving business, you will then have the time and the financial resources to do your best work, to design the architecture that you want to design. We've built a powerful program of resources, training, and community for you, the small firm architect. We'll show you how to build a better business so you can be a better architect. EntreArchitect Academy. To learn more, visit the homepage at EntreArchitect.com. Hey, it's Mark R. LePage, and it is deep summer up here in New York State. That means I'm on vacation, enjoying the freedom of being a small firm entrepreneur architect. But don't worry, I'm not leaving you without your weekly episode here at EntreArchitect Podcast. I decided to look back at our analytics and find the best shows, the most popular episodes, and share them again. So if you've already listened, I'm sure this will be a great show to hear again. There is always something new to learn. And if you haven't heard this episode yet, I know you're going to love this one. So until I return, enjoy this best of episode from EntreArchitect podcast. This is the episode that so many of you and I have been waiting for. This week at EntreArchitect podcast, I invited Declan Keefe of Placetailor back to the show. He was just here to share his knowledge, and he has shared tons of his knowledge here. I can't wait to share this with you about how to get started as an architect developer. This episode of EntreArchitect podcast is supported by our platform sponsors, Freshbooks, Core by BQE Software, and ARCAT. And I'm going to share more about these great companies later in the show. But before we get started here, just take a quick note to schedule some time later today, as soon as you're finished listening here, to go visit each one of them and let them know that you appreciate them for supporting us, the EntreArchitect community. Declan Keefe, welcome back to the EntreArchitect podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. The first episode, not too long ago, episode 130, this is 133, so just 3 episodes ago you were here. You shared an amazing origin story. Every guest we have on, we ask for their origin story, and you have a great one, talking about as a student, you were hired by this firm, and in less than 3 years later, you owned it. So anybody who wants to hear that story, and it's definitely worth the listen, and so many more tidbits of value in that episode 130. Go back and listen to that. The one thing that you did mention during that episode is you talked about your business model. You talked about how Placetailor, your firm, based in Boston, provides not only architectural services and construction services as a design build firm, but you also do architect as developer. And when people hear that, they want to know more. And every time I have a guest on that talks about that, I know that's an in-depth subject. And so I tease them and say, I'll have them come back. And so I'm fulfilling the promise. I'm fulfilling the promise and having you back to talk about architect as developer. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
So before we get into that, remind us about your firm. Talk about like the full business model and all the things you do, and then we'll get more into architect as developer.
So we are an architecture firm that provides architectural services, construction services, and does real estate development. So that's the perspective that we come at it from. We look at architecture sort of as the genesis for all of the ideas, but it's not necessarily the genesis of where the work comes from. And that's largely where the real estate development piece came in. We were running the business for a number of years, as we talked about in the last episodes, just as a design build company. And that was working well. We were working for clients, and we reached a point where we sort of decided as a team that we've got to get serious about running a business here. And in that decision, there was, how are we really going to take control over the revenue and the profit side of this business when there's so much unknown about the market itself, especially in such a volatile industry such as the construction and architecture world. Keep in mind that we started the business in 2008. So not necessarily the greatest economics times for...
Wow, that's not a good year.
Right. And so, truth be told, we didn't make money for really a number of years, which is fairly common. And in fact, we lost quite a bit of money. And so the whole truth of it is I took over a business that was in a significant amount of debt. And I knew it was in debt. I didn't quite know just how bad it really was until I really was in there digging through the numbers and decided that there was a way out potentially. and it was going to be a risky way out, but we were in the position where either we make it work now or it doesn't happen. The business is going to close, or we make the debts that we had go away. And so we talked about it, saying that we needed a silver bullet. I mean, that's really the conversations that we had within the company. And we decided that that silver bullet could be real estate development, and that it was worth the risk because we were already in such a risky scenario holding on with so much debt that we might as well give it a go. And that we kind of needed to wipe just about all of our debts out with one or two projects. The short version is that's pretty much what we did. And we can talk today about sort of how that happened and what the process was. But in doing it, we realized a lot of things about the way in which our business model worked, which was the conjunction between architecture, construction, and real estate development. So I'm sure a lot of people out there are looking at it from the architect as developer perspective. And I would say that the model that we operate on is fairly different from that model in that we're not just architect as developer, we're architect as builder as developer. And there's an important piece there because there's a very important role played by the builder in the middle of this. And truthfully, that's where most of the revenue that exists within real estate development and in architecture is really all filtering through the builder. And so the greatest amount of revenue has a great potential for return and also a great potential for risk, even just on the contracting side. And so, the architect in $1 million deal isn't making $1 million, or they're not even having $1 million of revenue running through. They're getting, some percentage of that coming through. So the architecture piece of it can feed the others, and the truth is that even through the development arm, maybe depending on how you set up the structure of the business, maybe it feeds through the development arm. But one thing that we know for sure is that it's going to feed through the construction arm. And so I did just want to call out the difference between an architect builder developer and an architect developer.
What you just described is the architect as builder developer. Just so we can compare, what's the other one, the architect as developer model, so we can compare the two.
And so the architect as developer model would be, in many cases, the way that it works is they're really functioning as a developer, and they minimize or just expense the fee of architecture internally. So it becomes an overhead cost to the development in many cases, and maybe you design it. You're just designing it yourself, depending on the size of the company. Maybe it is just one person, or it's your team, and so it could just be your time. But what you're relying on is the profits from development to pay yourself back on the architecture side. Not that necessarily it's a fee based for the architect.
Right. So you get some sort of funding. You do your architecture piece of it. You have this building built. You sell it or rent it. You get compensated for your architectural services and some sort of additional payback, either through rent or through the sale.
Right. And the reason that's so different is you can't pay the entire cost of construction through the profits on development. So whereas you can potentially pay the entire cost of the architectural fees on the profits from development. And so that's where there's a major difference is. One, there's dollars that have to come in from financing, or whether that's through a bank or investor or your own funds, that have to come in up front to pay the contractor and the builder through the process. Whereas the architecture fee, depending on the size of the project, doesn't necessarily even have to come in up front at all. You could hold that to the end and just have it based on the profits. And so that is a fairly different part of the process. It's not that construction doesn't happen. It's just that maybe the contractor themselves, if you're subcontracting it out, has to figure out where the upfront financing comes from, or how they're going to do the cash flow of the project. And there's pluses and minuses to both. And I suppose we can talk about the benefits of either today.
Yeah. What I think would be really useful is maybe walk us through one of your projects. Sort of use one of your projects as an example and sort of go from the very origin of it and walk us through the steps of how you got it built and either sold or rented, or however you do the back end of it.
Right. So the true structure of the way that our business is set up is there's really two different businesses. There's the design build business, which is one legal entity, and then there's a development LLC that gets created for each project. So that's just sort of to get that up front. So when I talk about the different entities throughout this process, that's what.
So every project you do is a separate company. So if you've done 10 projects, you've done 10 companies.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And they're all different legal entities. They pay taxes separately. And there's many reasons we do it. One of the major ones is just liability. If it's a separate business, if that project completely fails, it doesn't mean that our design and construction business has to go under. That entity itself could go under. Another major reason for us doing that is, as you would have heard in the other episode that we did, we're an employee-owned cooperative. And so we don't want it to be the case that everybody in the cooperative has to be on board for us to do a development. And so the development portion of it can be owned by and have partners that are some of the owners, but not all of them. And it gives us the opening to bring in people who are not within the co-op, either within the company or outside the company, to be partial owners in the projects.
Right. So just to clarify that, in case they didn't hear the first episode, Place Taylor is owned by all of the employees. And so the details of that, you should listen to episode 130. But one of the reasons that you make each project its own entity is so the members of Place Taylor could choose to be part of it or not.
Right, exactly.
That's one of the reasons why to make it, but also liability. That's a very common,
it is common
approach to make each project its own entity, so you can reduce risk all over the place.
Right. So back to the question you asked of sort of step by step through the process. The first caveat is that it's never the same twice, but this is sort of a generalization of how it goes. Generally, the first step literally is myself and my business partner, Evan Smith, who generally he and I are in on every development deal we do. And it's sort of, he and I will propose it to the team and we'll find the rest of the partners in the financing to bring together. So he and I will bike around or get in a car or just walk around a neighborhood and literally just see, what is this neighborhood about? Where is the land that's available? What are the houses that are here? And we're not just looking for what's on the market and what does Zillow say. It's really looking, where is there an opportunity? Is there an empty piece of land here? And so we'll just create a list. We're going around a neighborhood and we say, all right, there's this address here, there's this address here. And then we come back to the office and we do a little research. We look at the zoning. We look at who owns it. Is there tax liens on it? Or does it own it because it's in the family trust, or are they a developer holding on to it? And depending on the answers to all those, there's more or less likelihood that we're going to be able to get it from them. There's complexities that we may or may not want to deal with. We don't want to displace anybody, and so we're not buying houses that are currently being rented or lived in by somebody who hasn't already decided that they're leaving. And so that's just a line in the sand we set on the social sort of justice side of things. Yep. And so those aren't properties we'll go after if that's what we find. And
what type of projects do you typically do? Is it single family, multifamily, commercial?
We don't do commercial as of now, though we'd love to. It's a very different business model, which we could talk about a little later, than what we have been doing. We've been doing residential condo-based development. So it's the shortest term return on real estate development, which when we get to the end of this process, we'll talk about.
Okay.
But residential, and usually lately it's been small multifamily. So anything from a 2-unit, which we're wrapping up one right now, up to a 5 or 6 unit, and even we're setting our scopes on higher developments right now. We're in the midst of working on one that's around 33 units, and so we're not constraining ourselves based off of the scale necessarily, though because of the market we're in within Boston, we understand that we're sort of fitting into a small to mid-scale gap that we see in the market in some of the neighborhoods in Boston, which is if you go too much bigger, you're competing against the big boys, and there's no way we're going to be able to do it.
That's an important tip.
Yeah.
Is that if you go too big, then you're dealing with big monster developers.
Yeah, and they've got so much money that there's no way you could go up against them, and they've got so much staff, and so just everything about it where we wouldn't be able to compete.
So you're flying just below the radar, as high as you can get without being noticed.
And in Boston, also the other piece of it is it's a union city. So if you go too big, now I can't do the contracting side of it. I've got to sub that out too. Okay. So there is and every city's going to have a different line of where the scale makes most sense. And we think we can get up to the sweet spot for us. I think what we're hoping to get up to is around a 10-unit development. But what you realize then is there's not a lot of land left in the city of Boston to go new construction doing that scale, and you don't usually buy a 10-unit building all at once in Boston without a good chunk of change. So where we've landed is this 3 to 5 unit is where a lot of our project. I think we have 6 projects coming up in the next year and a half that are all in that size, so the 3 to 5 or 6 units.
Okay, so you identify the property and say, okay, this is a good idea here. We've done the research, and this is a good piece of property.
So this is a good piece of property, and that's just on this is a neighborhood. We think we could sell something here, and then it comes into the financial analysis side, which is sure, it's a good piece of property, but is it a good financially? Is the decision a good one based in a financial model? And so we have a pro forma that we've created, which is really just a tool that can track profits and losses in the development side of things. And in our business, this is just the way we work, both on the architecture, construction, and real estate development. We've created a lot of spreadsheet tools, and those tools allow us to do a really quick analysis of things, and then we have versions that allow us to do more detailed analysis. And so the first thing is throw it into the quick analysis, which is a handful of inputs. What's the size of the land? Where is it located? What do we think we could sell it for based off of comps that we've seen? And what's the number look like at the end? And if that quick analysis says that it looks like it could be a decent project, that's sort of where we stop at that phase, and we realize that we want to go after this. And depending on where that land was, if it's something listed on the multiple listing server, MLS, or any of the other services that are now available to find real estate, we know we need to move really fast because nothing stays on the market that long if it's a good deal. And so the scale that all of this is happening, it could happen really within hours. Everything I've described so far could be within hours. So we see the property, we come back to the office, we find it's a good deal, we do the financial analysis, and now we're either responding to the sale or we're finding our investors by the end of the day. And so an understanding and a knowledge base is important to build, which is whether this is a good idea or not needs to be determined quickly, especially if something's listed on the market, because we're going to need to put an offer in, and we're going to need to know how high we can go and how low we should start. And that's going to be based off of this financial analysis that we've done. And even if it's not on the market, we still want to move fairly quickly because we're not the only ones that know that you walk around the neighborhood and look for land and put in offers, right? Right. So then we put an offer in, and there's a whole sort of standard negotiating process, whether we're getting it or not. If we're up against someone else, then it's really a crapshoot because you don't know what everyone else is offering, and what we find is really important is we need to pick your high point. We're not going any higher than this. Don't get attached to it emotionally, because you will follow that emotion beyond the reasonable financial stopping point, unless you've really just drawn the line in the spreadsheet, if you will, that says this is where you're stopping.
So when you're thinking money and you're talking money, put your creativity away.
Mm-hmm.
put your architect hat off to the side for a little while, because we're all dreamers,
right?
And stay focused on the money and the profit. And if it doesn't work, you have to walk away from it.
And it could be the case that the creativity is what allows you to unlock the land that makes it into a good decision.
Right. Yep.
And so there is creativity involved in putting the numbers into that spreadsheet. And that could be your better analysis of the zoning, your analysis of where the city has play, your understanding of the neighborhood, and knowing the players there and that they want greater density or that they want less density and that you might be able to get the variance or you might not. And so there is creativity in a knowledge base that is helpful in that process. My point is, do that creativity, draw your own line in the sand, which is still a risky endeavor. So if you're going for something that isn't just allowable by the city, if it's anything other than that, there's a risk involved. And then draw that line and say, I'm not going. Then you put the creativity away. Does it meet this number or is it not? If it doesn't, we're done. We move on to the next one.
Right. I mean, the creativity that architects have actually is one of the advantages we have in this world.
It's huge.
Is that we can upfront, before we make these decisions, we see what the potential could be for this property that maybe a regular developer couldn't do, or a builder couldn't do, or just an investor couldn't do. We have these skills and this an additional talent of being able to dream and to see things that others can't, and to quickly make those decisions, go through those analyses, zoning analyses, financial analyses, to see if they all align.
Right.
And
the hard part about it in the development side is you can't get caught up in the creativity up front because it's got to happen so fast.
Yeah.
Right. Every single time I have a piece of property, I want to jump into the sketchbook and start drawing the building, and I want to start figuring out how it's going to look with the rest of the context in the neighborhood and all of that fun stuff. But I don't think about it design-wise at all. How many square feet can I fit? It's like, can I fit it here? Or what's the zoning enough? So like really just the practical side of the creative endeavor of the architectural process. And you can get to the other stuff later. And that's the real fun of the architect as developer model, is you can get to that stuff later. And it's up to you to how much time you want to put into it once you have the land and once you've got the financing set up.
Right.
So let's just say everything goes great and we get the property, or we get our offer accepted rather. There's a risk in even putting an offer in, because at this point you'll have noted that I haven't said where the money's coming from.
Yeah, right? That was going to be my next question, because I know everybody listening is thinking the same thing.
And the truth is, this is actually how we do the process. We don't know where the money's coming from when we put an offer in. Sometimes we might, but we very often will put an offer in before we know where it's coming from. And what that means is whatever deposit you're putting down is at risk. So you'd be putting a few grand in or more than that potentially. You could lose all of that money if you can't figure out how to put your financing in place in time. And so you could put in your offer form good terms for yourself that say, I don't need to figure that out for, a month or 2 months, but your offer could be denied just because you want to wait that long. And if you've got the cash, great. You don't need to worry about this. But I'm going to guess that most of us out there don't just have all of the money to do the development on our own, right? So our offer's accepted, which is a fairly rare thing, and one of the biggest skill sets that I like to say related to doing real estate development is just to not. And I've already mentioned it briefly, is to not get emotionally attached to it. It's if you're going to lose most of the things that you go after. 90% or more of the offers you go for, the analysis you do, the numbers you calculate, the things you get excited about, the land you find, you're going to put an offer in and it's already going to have been sold a month ago and no one just updated it at MLS. Or someone's putting in twice as much money as you're willing to put in there because they just want the property. And it's a homeowner and they don't care about it as an investment. They want the land because they think it's beautiful. Whatever the reason is, you're going to lose a lot of these opportunities, and there's no point in fighting for it. And that's why you have to draw the line in the sand. And so it's not so often that you get the great feeling that this is actually going to work out. And I'm speaking again for all out there. This is the Boston perspective, which is a very competitive market. There's thousands and thousands of people doing the exact same thing that I'm doing every day, all day long, and I get to do it a couple days a month for a half a day, right? So I'm not necessarily in the best position, but that's where the creativity comes in, is figuring out how can I find something that someone else didn't find. I think that actually is probably very different in many different places around the country where there is real estate sitting, and there's still places in Detroit where you can just go pay $1 for a piece of land, and maybe if you're creative about it, make a decent deal out of it. So It's very market dependent. Even in Boston, just depending on where you build in Boston, it's a very different situation. So keep that in mind for sure. But so we've got the land offer accepted, and now what do you do? So we've had endless numbers of ways in which we've gone about getting the financing. The way in which we started on the first one was effectively a crowdfunding deal. And this was before crowdfunding as a true platform, one, was legal, and two, was so easy, structured so well on an online platform. So for those of you who are interested, you can start to do research about the Jobs Act, which is coming from the SEC, which is starting to allow different types of investment to happen in not just in real estate, but sort of across investment industries. And how it affects real estate is now there's you don't need to be an accredited investor to invest in real estate developments. And so there's platforms online. If you want to do research, you can find some where you can put up a piece of land and say, hey, I'm looking for investment in this, that, or the other thing, and try to get investors to back you. So that's the modern version of it. We've done it in the past where we've not done the friends and family thing so much, which is a fairly common way of doing this. You know, you can crowdsource amongst your aunts and uncles and your parents and your cousins and your best friends and scrap together the change. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as you're really clear about your boundaries and contracts and deal with those things as legal documents, not as offers and sort of friendly favors. This is business, and treat it like business. That's my opinion on those.
Yeah, I agree.
But what we did is we found we used the value that we had in Place Taylor as an architecture and construction company, and the brand that we had developed, and the goodwill that was in our business, and we went out and we pitched it to people who we knew cared about our business. We said, we're doing something new here. We want to be able to push the boundaries of high-performance buildings, and we want to test it in the real estate development world, which, as far as we knew at the time, this was a number of years ago, no one had done a speculative passive house project in the country. And so for us, it was, what's your pitch? What's your story really going to be? And if you go to someone saying, well, I don't really know what I'm doing and this is risky, but if you could just help me out, you'd have to be dumb or your mother to say yes to that, right?
Right.
And so there's a piece of this process which is just being confident about your own business and being confident about something that is going to be risky, but you have to honestly believe it's a good idea. You shouldn't get someone involved into this. It doesn't matter who it is, if you don't honestly believe yourself that you know how you're going to carry it out. And so we did that. We went and pitched it to enough people and, got plenty of no's, and we got lots of maybes that turned into no's. And then we got a few yeses, enough to get our first a small piece of land. And the land's the first step because, or it doesn't have to be a piece of land. It could be a building you're renovating or whatever. It's the property itself, in whatever condition it is the huge first step. And it's important to think about both the land and then the cost it's going to take to renovate the property, because both matter. But if you feel confident you're going to be able to get the capital to do the entire project somehow, then the first step is to just try to get the land secured, because until you've actually bought it and it's in your name, there's plenty of ways for the seller to wiggle their way out and sell it to someone for more. That's just the way that real estate works. There's a lot of ways where the deal's going to fall apart even after your offer is accepted. And so getting it in your name as quick as possible is important. And then you've got the flexibility of time on your side, which is sort of a big sigh of relief. And so it could be really where you go from having seen a piece of land to getting an offer accepted to needing your financing in place in the matter of 48 hours. So this is a really fast. It's all of your other work has to be able to be put aside. If this is a sort of sole proprietorship architecture company going on here, because you're got to be working on this. Your whole mind itself is focused on this. There's no meetings, there's no distractions. It's you're doing your numbers, you're focusing on the development side.
And your pro forma those other tools that you're using takes all that into account, right? So it says, if it is a renovated building, you go through the idea of approximately how much it's going to cost to purchase it, how much is it going to cost to renovate it, because you need to have all that funding when you start pitching it for financing. Let's take a quick break here to say thank you to our platform sponsors here at EntreArchitect: Freshbooks, Core by BQE Software, and ARCAT. Freshbooks makes it simple to send invoices, post your expenses automatically, track your time for the whole team by project, and get organized with reports, communication, and notifications. My favorite feature at Freshbooks is the automated invoice reminders. It's a simple feature, and I think sending invoices and getting paid is one of the biggest barriers to our success as entrepreneur architects. Who has the time, right? But if we don't send out those invoices, we don't get paid. FreshBooks makes it easy to send out invoices and get paid online with a click of a button. And when your client doesn't pay on time, FreshBooks will send them a friendly email reminder automatically through a simple system that you control. Sign up for a free 30-day unrestricted trial and get ready for the simplest way to be more productive, organized, and most importantly, get paid faster. Visit EntreArchitect.com/FreshBooks to access FreshBooks for free for 30 days, and be sure to enter EntreArchitect in the How Did You Hear About Us section. One of the most often requested resources here at the EntreArchitect community is project management software. How do we keep our projects and our people organized while we grow as entrepreneur architects? Well, this podcast is sponsored by our friends, the AIA Advantage partner, BQE Software. They are the makers of ArchiOffice. But BQE just released a new product built just for us architects. It's called Core. You may have heard about it. BQE built Core in response to what we want in a project management software. BQE Core lets you practically run your office from a single platform. Time and expense tracking, project management, dashboards, reports, billing, and accounting are seamlessly integrated in an easy-to-use interface that will save you time, effort, and money. And listeners to this podcast, the EntreArchitect podcast, can get a free 15-day trial free for Core. Try it out at EntreArchitect.com/BQE. EntreArchitect.com/BQE. If you've been listening to this podcast anytime during the last few months, you've heard me talk about our friends, ARCAT. And hopefully you're using their free resources every day as an architect. For those of you who have not yet checked them out, ARCAT's a great tool for us small firm architects. ARCAT has a huge library of free content, CAD, BIM, specifications, and tons more. And they've done all the work for you. If you need a spec, click over and download a CSI 3-part specification in multiple formats, any way you want it. And how about a CAD detail or a BIM object? They're there, all free, at the click of a mouse. It's super simple. ARCAT has tons of building products. Their content is there ready for you to use, and it's all completely free. And you don't even have to register to download it. Check it out at arcat.com. Have you tried out their newest free tool? It's called Charrette. Create a project, assign tasks, share and collaborate with colleagues and clients in real time. Pull content from the ARCAT database or from anywhere on the web and put it in Charrette. Keeps it organized in all one place. And guess what? Charrette is free too for the EntreArchitect community. Visit them at EntreArchitect.com/ARCAT, ARCAT, EntreArchitect.com/ARCAT, and click on the Charrette icon to check them out and let them know that EntreArchitect sent you. FreshBooks, Core by BQE Software, and ARCAT. Please visit our platform sponsors today and thank them for supporting you, the EntreArchitect community. Something very interesting that you said is that you have to go in there confident and you have to know what you're talking about. you need to essentially market this just like you were marketing your business or marketing your services to your clients. You need to market this deal to these potential investors. So you have to create that story. What's that story for this project? Why am I qualified to do this as an architect? Why am I coming to you? What's the benefit to the investor on the other end? You need to craft that story and be very good at telling that story.
Right.
So when you get there, you have a story to tell, and you can be confident telling it.
And in addition to that, just as we know as designers, there's different ways of telling stories. So there's the verbal story, which I think is very important and I think is underemphasized sort of across the architectural world, is the ability to talk and actually share your story verbally with somebody. But there's also the visual and collateral-based story. So what are you going to actually hand them when you show up to that meeting? What does your pro forma look like? Does it look professional? Are the numbers actually adding up? What is the interest rate you're giving, and how does that compare to what other investments they might have? You've got to know where is they taking their money from? Where is it coming from, and why would they put it in yours instead of where they've got it? If you're not going to give them a better interest rate, then that's got to be an even better story that they believe in this because the social justice side of it, or innovation, or it's just going to be more fun to work on this project than whatever else they're doing. However you want to create your angle. Or the angle could be, we're going to pay you more. And we've done that too. No matter where else you're investing, we're going to pay you twice that. And we believe this deal is so good that we can handle that cost because you're only giving us $20,000, and 15% return on $20,000 over 12 months is going to be a small chunk of the total interest we're going to pay on this project. So all of that needs to be looked at, and that for us, it was the case on the first few projects where every single deal we did with independent investors was different. The terms were different, the rates were different, the lengths of time were different, the legal documents were different. And so it's not like you just have one form and you're done. I literally was customizing a legal document per pitch. It's who is this person? Where are they coming from? What can I sell to them? And have honestly be a good deal for both parties. And this is not often maybe the way that development is done, but I feel very strongly that I want to feel good about giving them the interest that they deserve. They are helping us as much as we're helping them make money on their money. And this is a business endeavor for them, and it's a business endeavor for us. It's not that they're just donating money to you. That's not the ask that you're going for. And so treat it like a business negotiation. They might want better terms, and you could hold your ground, or you could give it to them. And so it is a big part of it is that ask. And say you're doing a project that costs $2.2 million, you're not looking to get from small investors $2.2 million. You could, and that would be one way to go about it. And we've done that. We're in the midst of a project that's, I don't know, $1.5 million or $2 million total project cost. And we have enough investors built up now. We did do it in cash. We didn't even go to a bank at all. We had enough people, and we got enough good terms. We brought some of our own capital now that we've been doing this for a little while, and we're able to avoid going to a bank. That's not generally the best way of going about it because banks lend at such low interest rates that it's really unlikely you're going to get an at-risk investor to come in and beat out a bank who's coming in at a 5% interest rate. Right.
So those first projects, you're doing both private investment and banks. Before we get into that, who are the types of people that you went to? Because you said you didn't talk to grandma, you didn't talk to mom, you didn't talk to your Uncle Joe. You went to somebody else. So who are those people? What types of people are you talking about?
No, it was a strange list, and I don't know if most businesses have this list of people or not, but it was. I guess I would have to describe them as place-tailor groupies. It was people who really were just excited in the work that we were doing.
You're raving fans.
Yeah, and it wasn't. It was people who found out about us, read a news article about us and reached out. It was people I met at conferences who were sort of bamboozled by the way in which we did business, and so it was a lot of those were strange emails. It's the, hey, do you want to meet up for coffee? I know we only talked once 2 years ago, but you seemed interested in what we're doing, and this is the next phase of PlaceTailor. Wondering if you're involved, want to get involved.
Yeah.
Now what I have, now that we've done it a number of times, I have a really simple thing on the bottom of our website at placetailor.com. You scroll to the bottom and there's a checklist, and all you have to do is put your name in, your email, and you check a box. And they say things like, I want to work at PlaceTailor, or I want you to help me do a design build project, or what are the investment opportunities? And that box gets checked fairly regularly, and I follow up right away just saying, hey, this is either what's available now, or thanks for reaching out. When we have the next thing come up, I'll shoot you an email.
What a great tip. Yeah.
And so now you've prepped them that the next thing comes. And I do have a sort of a script of the way in which that process will go. And I'll try to, if my schedule allows, meet with them, even if we don't have anything to pitch at the time. Because what I need to describe is that it's just as fast as we need to move on our end. Really, the harder part is those people moving on their end. Because that investment that I said takes 48 hours, that deal from finding the land to needing to close an offer, could really mean that these investors who potentially, if you're not using an accredited investor, don't do this every day. Right? This is money that they've saved up and they maybe have invested somewhere else. And you need to explain to them that I might need that money as fast as, 48 hours to 2 weeks from now. And is it realistic that from the day I give you a phone call and send you my draft of all of my collateral materials and I make the pitch that we were talking about, is it even feasible for you to get the money to us? And the answer could be no. And at which point that goes in your spreadsheet of, all right, I know that Joe Smith can get me money, but it's going to take him 2 months to get it out of his investment account and into our account, which could be fine. That could be money that comes in at the closing, but it's not money that's going to go in for your purchase and sale agreement, right? So there's different phases in the sale process, and it could be, all right, I need to have the capital myself to put in for the deposit, because that's going in before I've even talked to anyone. I need to come in with at least half of the actual money that's coming at the purchase and sale of the land, because that's sort of middle of the process. And I know I've got, Jill over here who can bring me money quickly if an investor's interested. And then I know I've got the Joe Smith over there who really wants to invest and is going to do it just about any project we offer, but it's going to take him a long time to get the money. And so you're building your team as you go, and everyone's money's going to act differently. And so that's what we did. We found enough of those people. We reached out and had enough successful conversations where we got these deals where we had got enough capital together.
So it was the result of networking and building relationships with a lot of people, influential people, and people who may be interested in this kind of thing. So that's the first piece is networking before the deal. So you know these people and you've built these relationships, so you can have these conversations. The other piece is really important, and we talk about it all the time here at EntreArchitect, is your brand. You leveraged your brand. You built the brand first, and that was the first thing you said, is that the PlaceTailor groupies, that's based on your brand. Yeah. You spent a lot of time and effort building a strong, powerful brand on which you then leveraged these relationships. Yeah. So when people hear me screaming at architects saying, build your brand, there's another reason why you need to build your brand.
Oh, yeah. I could say very confidently, those early projects, there's no way anyone would have invested in us without that story. No, there's just no way. They had no reason to. Honestly, it was the financial side of it. The numbers looked okay, but they need to trust that the numbers I was giving them are even real. And so there's a level of trust and an excitement about what this could be that gets someone committed to even following through on the conversation. And then it becomes a little easier because you've got history behind you, which can say, well, the last one did well, and don't you want to be involved in that? And
the more you do, the easier it gets.
Right, exactly.
Right. So let's say you have $1 million project, and you've tapped out all of your private investors. You still need more, so now you're going to hit the bank.
So now you go to the bank. Yeah.
What happens there? How do you do that?
So it depends on the bank you're working with, of what you'll actually need and what your terms are. And that's another one you could try to do up front. And depending on the kind of banks you work with, is just go to them. What kind of deals do you do? Is this just an informational call? I don't have a project right now, but I'm interested in doing this. Like, what's it really going to cost me? You could find some of this stuff just online by doing just research, but you could go to a bank and find a real bank that could be your partner. And then what we did is generally we find there's some number around 20% that we're going to need of equity up front, which means the value of the land, which now we've paid for outright because we've gotten all these investors in, plus the value of the time that we put into the project, which is another one for us architects out there. We can show the bank the value of the time we put in designing something without necessarily having paid ourselves. So we could say, this is a $30,000 worth of architectural value that we have here, and now that's equity that we're leveraging against in the actual bank negotiations. So it's value of the land plus the value of the design plus the value of, depending on how far you've gotten actually having a permit in place, or anything else that you've done before you've gone to the bank, you can start to count towards the equity that you have into the project. And then banks will, depending on the type of project, they'll do a loan to value of that 20 to 80 or 30 to 70%. And so all you got to do is bring that 20, and they could potentially lend the other 70. However, it's not necessarily that easy, because what they're going to do is they're going to look at how risky is this. And in the same way in which you made the pitch to your investors, you're making a pitch to the banker, which is, no, I know this is a good idea because X, Y, and Z. What they're not going to care about nearly as much is that brand of your business. And the way I like to describe this is, it's illegal for them to care about that. The bank has to just look at the numbers. That's the way in which the Federal Reserve tells them that they have to do analysis for their financing. And almost every bank, even if they give you a mortgage or mortgage lending, is then selling that mortgage to somebody else. And so they have to follow the rules of, it meets this risk portfolio, it matches this appraisal process, and all of those things are just sort of calculated checkboxes on a spreadsheet. And so it's really helpful, I think, to build a relationship with the banker, because they are going to either look at that in a favorable or a non-favorable way. And like, if they don't want you to do a deal with you, they're not going to even get to that point. If they want to do a deal with you because they feel like what you're doing is a good idea, or you're a good guy or a good gal, and you want to move forward with it with you as an individual, they're more likely to try to figure out a way to get it to work. But it is the case that it's just a numbers game. And so this is one that keeps me in check, is you're not fooling anybody by saying that this is going to make a 2% return and you're okay with that, because the project's not going to happen. You have to show a certain percentage of return, or a bank's never going to lend to you. So the only way to do a 2% return project where there's such a likelihood you're going to lose money is to bring all the capital yourself and take that risk on your own. I wouldn't do it if there was investors, because investors not going to want to do it. It really has to be your own cash.
What's a typical percentage of return that a bank's looking for?
It really depends on how you're doing it. But if you're doing the condo-based sales at the end, like we're doing in the residential market, often they're looking for around a 15% return. Now that's complicated because it's 15% of what? It's, and unless we were looking at a spreadsheet together, we're never going to get to the bottom of what's really included in that.
I just wanted a comparison. Yeah. You said 2's not going to work.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that's, there's a spectrum there. And that might feel like a big return on your costs. So, no, and again, that would be 15 or 2% on your costs of the project. It could be the case, and we have done this before, where you have a deal you've put $0 of cash into. It's all done with investors. So that 2 to 15% might look great to you because you put $100 into it, and you're going to make $1,000 back. Right? That's a multiplier of tenfold of the $1,000 that you put in. Right? That is a really great deal in terms of investment, but a bank's not going to lend to you. So just because it looks good to you doesn't mean that the bank on the other end is going to be okay giving you the money that you really need to.
And by building that relationship with the banker, that's information that you'll have up front. You'll know what they're expecting.
Right. So if it goes well, the bank will do its appraisal, and they'll do 2 appraisals, really. There's one of the existing property, what's the value there, so they have the understanding of the equity up front. And then they'll do appraisal of what they project the value is going to be of the development that you create. And this is where the creativity in the architecture fund comes back in, because now you're doing drawings and you're showing them what the vision is. And you could charge this as a fee to the development and try to pay yourself, or you could, like I said earlier, do it at risk and pay yourself back with the profits at the end of the project. And that would be the at-risk work too, is if you don't make any money, you don't make any money on the architecture. And that could be your business model. That's a decision that needs to be made. So if all of that happens and the bank says, okay, that's a good position to be in, the bank's also going to look at, in addition to just the numbers in the pro forma and your design, they're going to look at your personal credit. And this can be where a lot of us out there really get held up. And this is really our biggest challenge up front, is what's securing this project if something really goes wrong. You could make a deal with those investors that they're also going to be guarantors. And a guarantor is just someone that signs on. They don't necessarily have to have put capital in, but they say, if something goes wrong in this project, we're backing it up. And if you had the capital to be your own guarantor and be confident that the banks are comfortable with that, then you're good to go, sign on the dotted line, and you're going to get a loan. If you're like many startup architecture firms where you've got really nothing in the bank, you might not even own your own house or your own car, which is my case, right? You live that lifestyle by choice or not.
Yeah. And you said in the beginning that you were the owner of a firm that was in significant debt.
Right. So now
the whole point of this was to try to get out of debt. And so now the banks are looking at that.
Exactly. So you can't hide anything when you're going to the bank. And so then now you're looking for another partner. It's who's willing to sign on to this for some return on something to take on that risk to help back you up and do this project.
So now you're going back to one of your investors and trying to...
Or you're finding somebody else, or...
Right, so they may not put any money up. They may just be willing to sign
on as a guarantor. And now we're talking about a whole nother level of negotiations on it's a much harder thing to understand, the risk of a guarantee, than it is a return on a percentage return on an investment. So if you're going to an investor, you could say, all right, give me $100,000 and I'll pay you back at a rate of 10%. Over 12 months. That's a pretty easy return. You can calculate it out. With a guarantor, there's no real knowing what the total risk of that project is, because you don't know when the project might fail. So it could be the project's almost about to be completed and then everything goes to shit and the banks come after you for the whole total cost of the project. And now you're signed on as a guarantor. There's a lot of money out there at risk. So it's a little bit... more difficult. And often what ends up happening is the person who wants to sign on as a guarantor wants to be an equity partner. And this isn't always the case, but an equity partner means you're not giving them a percentage return on the amount of money they put in. You're giving them a certain percentage of the profits that you might make on this total project.
So essentially they become an owner of the project with you.
They could be. There's lots of different ways you can structure that legally, but effectively, in terms of the way that profit distribution works, it would be within the same process that the owners are getting distribution. This guarantor could have distribution.
Okay.
It's usually the case that actually they would get the money before the owners. So the owners are the last people who get the money back. Yeah. So anyone who's investor, they get it first. The people who are coming on as guarantors, they're going to get it somewhere in there, and then the owners are going to get it back there. Well, really the banks get it first. Banks get it before everybody, then the first round investors and the second round investors, and then the owners get their money back.
And that's all decided in the legal documents when you get the loans and the investments. It all explains that and who gets their money first.
Which is why you need to understand the whole process before you go pitching it to your investors, because you can't commit to them that they're going to have what's called the first position on the mortgage, because they're not. Yeah. There's no bank in America will lend to you without being in the first position. They can't. It's against the law. So, so it needs to be in the terms that they will get pushed back to second position when the bank gets in there, or third, or fourth, or fifth, or whatever it is. So now you've found your piece of land, you've gotten your investors, you pitched it to the bank's interested, you've taken care of your credit because you've gotten your guarantor, and the bank actually lends you the money, and now the terms in terms of what the bank's lending to you, you have to think about how is the money actually being released, and at some point in this, the way in which you've gotten your pro forma completed is that you've talked to a contractor in many of your cases, or my case, it simplifies it because I just do the estimating myself and I am the contractor, or my team is. And so we can tell them, no, these numbers are real because they're internal and this is what the cost will be, which gives us a huge amount of flexibility because we can say, we're not caring so much about making a huge profit on the construction side of this. Let's make those numbers look really good so that we can get the bank to give us this deal. And then we can cut a deal on the back end of the profits made on this project can shift back to the construction arm. And so we get a lot of flexibility because that huge number in a development project, which is the construction revenue, we have control over. And that's right there is the crux of the difference between an architect developer and the architect builder developer, is the control over that middle number, which by far is going to be the biggest number on your pro forma, is the construction costs we control. And it's not that it can go to zero. It's not like we're saying we're doing the project for free. And remember, we're actually legally different entities. So just because we're pushing money around, we're actually writing legal documents from one LLC to another, which I might be the partial owner of both of those. But there's an agreement that says, all right, we're going to push off the profits for the construction arm for X amount of dollars to the end. And we're going to have that be the first position in the waterfall, which means the first position after all of the investors get paid back. The first of the owners or the equity shared members get their return back. In this instance, Placetailor, the design build company, might be the first member to get that money back. Now, Placetailor might not have put any money in, but they've just, in exchange for allowing the contract to show that there's $100,000 or whatever pushed to the back, they get it released to them first. And maybe on that $100,000, there's a 10% return over the 6 months of construction. And so there's a benefit to both parties because it's acting like an investment without Placetailor needing to put money in. And now Placetailor's made some money off of not bringing in the revenue that it typically would have. And there's a benefit to the development arm because we can get a project pro forma to look far better than someone who doesn't have control over those numbers. So there's a 10% shift or whatever it needs to be on a construction budget. That essentially goes to that bottom line. So that 2 to 15% number, I could make a 2% return look like a 12% return by doing this little maneuver.
Right.
And that's not exactly the case because there's other costs in there, but
and you're still getting paid. You're just getting paid at a different time in the process.
Right. And so it does mean, though, that the true profit on that development is still 2%, which means that it's not that great of a development from the bank's perspective, but it's not like you're lying to them. That money is now at risk, and that's part of why there should be interest for Placetailor's side of things. If it goes wrong, we don't make the construction arm of the business doesn't make any money, doesn't make any profit. We make a revenue, we don't make profit if we're pushing all of our profits to the end. And so there is money that's being put at risk there. And so it's a legitimate way of doing it. It's just that without having control over that, you can't play with those numbers. And the only reason this really matters for us is that we do want to do projects that maybe are pushing the boundaries of affordable housing with high performance housing stock. And so we might want to spend more on a house, which doesn't make sense to a lot of developers, that you wouldn't want to capitalize on the most profits possible. But for us, we do. This is why we want to do it. We want to build the best product for the cheapest amount. And profit is not the number one goal in some of our projects on just the development side. But because there's all three of these different ways in which we can pull in profit from the architecture side, the construction side, the development, we get to decide which one of these entities does it make sense for us to bring in profit from on this project. And it does shift. Sometimes we team up with a developer and we're the minority share equity partner on a development, which is happening on some projects now, where we put the deal together, but we're not putting any money in. And in exchange for doing all of the work, we get a 30% share of the project. And the investor we brought in is actually equity for 70% of it. So it could be our deal, but we have the minority share. In that instance, it's going to actually be more beneficial to us to make the profit on the construction side, because we're going to make more throughout the year on profit on the construction. So this doesn't affect most probably listeners out there, but it's the more detailed or nuanced reason why I pointed it out up front in this.
No, it's important because it's a big difference.
It is, yeah.
And so so now we're funded, and what's the next step? And I know this is getting long, but this funding part and the beginning of what we just talked about is the piece that I think is missing from most of the discussions about architect as developer. Right. Is how do you do this up front? The back end of it is probably pretty typical. Yeah,
and that's partly why I spent the time there.
Because that's the question that everybody has.
Yeah, it definitely is. And the truth is, from that point on, if you've worked in the field of architecture, you've done the rest of it already. Except you're just going to be your own owner's rep. And you're going to get money released from a bank, which is usually how projects go. Some banks releasing it. It's just now you're the one talking to the banker. And you follow the construction schedule that's been agreed to by the contractor. You get the releases that are hopefully ahead of that schedule, which is part of what you're negotiating with the bank. And now the money's just flowing through your development entity to pay the contractor, and they build a project until it's done, and then the project's done. And that's something we don't need to spend that much time on, because I'm going to just assume that everyone here has sort of had the experience of building a building.
Right. So once you have the money, then you either, if you're a contractor yourself, you start building it, or if you have to hire a contractor, then you go through that process of hiring a contractor, which we all know how to do. Build it, and then once it's built. So you're talking about condos,
right?
Let's say we go through that process. It gets built and it's finished. What is the process that you're doing on your projects or this condo project that you're talking about?
So if you're doing condos, you have the typical process would be to list it. So you'd put it on the MLS, and people would come look at it and try to buy it, and they would put offers in, and you could hire.
Are you selling the whole building, or are you selling individual condo units?
We're in this part of the process. We are definitely more flexible, and depending on the scale of the building, we just show it. You want to buy the whole thing? We'll sell you the whole thing. You got to give us the right terms. If you want to buy one unit, let's talk about that too. And so it's really let's compare the numbers and let's have those conversations. We prefer not to use a realtor if we can avoid it, which we have done mostly.
So how are you marketing this project once it's finished?
So, and this is, again, back to that brand question. Many of the projects that we've done, we've actually been able to pre-sell. So before we've actually even finished construction, some of our projects this coming year, before we've even started construction, we have people who want to live in a Place Taylor house. So I get those contacted from people throughout the year. Tell us, just like we have investors who say, tell us when the next investment is. I have people saying, tell us when you build your next development because we want to live in one of your houses.
So you're building email lists.
We're building email lists.
You have an email list for people who are interested in investing, and you have an email list of people who want to buy.
Right. And I would say that that's probably a very unique scenario that we have. And it is entirely based in the brand that we have.
But if architects build their brands,
absolutely,
that's one of the benefits of building the brand, is then you can start collecting these emails, and you'll have these people who are interested in being part of your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where we start. We contact those folks and say, hey, we've got this property. Are you interested? And sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. Often what it really results in is they might know somebody who wants it, is they tell their friend who's also looking for a house. And that's a fairly common scenario, especially when you're talking with first-time home buyers who are, having their first or second kid and looking to get into a house. Their friends are also first-time home buyers with their first or second kid looking for a house. And they're also probably all in the similar category who care about your brand. Because if they care about it, their friends care about it, and maybe their family cares about it, because that's sort of how friends and family work, is you often have similarities. So don't think about them reaching out to some unlikely potential as that's the end of the line. Think about it as they might tell someone else about it. The other way to go about it, which we are actually just about to test, is instead of going through a realtor, at least in Massachusetts, and this is not the case in all states, if you are a licensed lawyer, you can list on the MLS an offering. And so we're working with our real estate attorney who works with us on the development side of things to check all these contracts that I've talked about, to put up the listing on the MLS for us for a fixed fee instead of a percentage of return on the project. And then I'm doing all the marketing myself. And the truth is, as soon as it hits MLS, it can populate all of these online tools, which is really what people are doing anyways.
Right. So it puts it on Zillow and all the other online real estate, realtor.com.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sorry to anybody who's a realtor out there, but the truth is that job has lost some value with the new tools that are available online. It's the job of a realtor used to be very difficult because you had to track down what was going on. And it's now just all public knowledge. It's really easy to get to. And so people can find that information with or without their realtors on the buyer's side. And you can get it out there without a realtor too, because these things populate the information. And so you just need to get it up there, which the limitation there is you have to either be a licensed realtor or you have to be a lawyer, depending on your state. And so we can get it listed based off of it. You could list as for sale by owner, which is possible. That's not what we've chosen to do so far. And the reason that I like to do the sales is right back to the same brand question. You're really going to hire someone who doesn't know your brand as well as you do that pitch. It's just never going to work out. And until we get to the scale where that becomes really a full-time job, it really makes sense for me to do it. I can get so much more value out of making that sale because I do it all day long. I'm just selling PlaceTailer like I always do. And that experience is so important for someone. When they show up to do that open house and they see your product, you are not just selling them the house, at least for PlaceTailer, you're selling them the opportunity to live in a PlaceTailer home. And think about all of the ways in which this will make your life better. And that's why that I say I need to do the sales process myself. And I realized that because we were using realtors on our first projects, and I did all of the work. I showed up to every open house, I made the sales, and the people who were interested were the ones that I was able to really give the story to. And so that's where we've moved, is down that path to say we've got to do this ourselves however we can. And ideally, we can do that before we even have to list anything and get the pre-sales. And in some instances, like the one we're doing now, we don't want to do a pre-sale because we want to see what the market will bear. And we want to see, okay, let's get the bidding war. Let's see what people will really pay for this project if it's out there. And a huge value, which is one that works for all of the architect developers out there, is think about all of the future potential clients that are coming through an open house. You want to meet every single person walking through that open house door, because even if they don't buy that house, you want them to be a client of yours. That's it. Is how often do you get strangers walking in, looking at something that's a real live 3-dimensional portfolio piece? Never, right?
Right.
And so use
Perfect marketing opportunity.
Absolutely. And that's happened so many times. Well, this isn't the one for us, but oh, great. Well, I happen to be an architect.
We just happen to have an architectural services wing of what we do.
Yeah. And so make that sale. And that's actually what's led to future developments for us too, is, all right, well, that's our next pre-sale, and that's how you start the next project. All right, you give us a deposit. You need 20% down on your future unit. You got to stick with us for 24 months here. It's going to take a while, but at the end of it, you're going to have a custom designed project. You get 3 more of those, and you build a triple-decker. And now your investor pitch doesn't have to go anywhere because your investors are your future homeowners. And so now you can get creative about the way you're doing this process.
And we could probably go on for another hour. This is so much information. I thank you so much for sharing what you're sharing here today. It's so much value. We are up against the clock here.
Yeah.
I'd love to have you back again because I want to know more about the branding part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that you have a passion for your brand.
Yeah.
Much of what we talked about, the success of your architect as developer business is built on that brand.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to have you come back again if you're interested and talk about the brand. Whenever we talk about brands, that also, it's a very popular episode. So I love hearing what you're having to say. So much value here today. Makes me want to go out and get started. It is the future of 5Cat Studio, our firm. That's where we're going as well. So it's so valuable to hear what you're saying and how to get started, because that's the piece that so many of us don't know.
Absolutely.
We know how to build it. We know how to maybe even to sell it, but to actually get the money to get started. And to find those pieces that we're looking for, so valuable. So thank you very much for sharing that information.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you can tell, I can go on and on about this stuff. So
no, that's a good thing. I wish we could do it for another hour, but eventually people turn it off. They have to get back to work. They got architecture to design.
Right.
So if you're interested, you can go to placetailor.com. That's like a fine custom suit tailor. It's TAILOR, placetailor.com. Also, all throughout social media, Placetailor. Declan, before we wrap, I wanted to start with you, actually. I'm going to start asking one question at the end of each of our episodes, and I'm going to ask you here. What's the one thing that small firm architects can do today to build a better business for tomorrow?
I would say stop doing whatever you're doing right now and take the time to think about your long-term plan. And don't let yourself be distracted by something else. This is your time to really think about it, and don't just do the budget-based, I want to make $500 million next year. It's what do you want out of your firm based off of the day-to-day? What is the work you want to be doing? And I think that's really important across the board, but definitely as it relates to architect as developer, this is not the work for everyone. It's scary, it's risky, it could put you in a really bad position, and you need to understand the risks if you're going to go ahead with that. And it could be the case that it's really just more enjoyable to keep doing architecture. And sitting back and understanding that is important, because the dollar at the end of the day is not the only story. And you're not going to, you can get caught up in the financial side of it unless you take that time. So.
Yeah, that's such a great answer to that. I think that's one of the biggest values of what you just said in this episode is to show us that it's not that easy. You imagine it, you're an architect, and sure, I can get some financing and I can go do it. But the process that you just laid out is very clear, but you can see that it's not easy. It's very complicated to get the financing, to get the bank to say yes, to make the whole deal work. That's the hard part.
Right.
And you want to make sure that you really want to do that before
right.
before you try it.
Absolutely.
And your answer to that question is exactly my answer. Is to plan your future. You need to know where you want to go in order to get there.
Right.
And so thank you for that. And thank you for your service to the profession today here. And I appreciate you for sharing your knowledge here at EntreArchitect Podcast.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Complete show notes and a direct link to download this episode will be found at entrearchitect.com/episode 134. My name is Mark R. LePage, and I am an entrepreneur architect, and I encourage you to go build a better business so you can be a better architect. Love, learn, and share what you know. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.
Imagine earning continuing education credits while doing exactly what you're doing right now. Well, you can. Gable Media has revolutionized the way you earn your continuing education credits with a groundbreaking approach. Forget running around town and scouring the internet for credit-worthy courses. Fulfill your CE requirements effortlessly by listening to engaging podcasts just like the one you're listening to now. Our podcasts are designed to educate, entertain, and inspire, all in a user-friendly environment. But wait, there's more. Architects, Gable Media is also approved as an AIA continuing education services provider. Upon completion, we handle everything, from reporting your hours directly to the AIA to storing your certificates in your personal Gable Media profile for your self-reporting needs. So follow the link in the show notes and start earning your credits in the most innovative and entertaining way possible with Gable Media.
Attention architects and creative minds, get ready to supercharge your brand with Build Your Brand, the podcast that's unlocking the secrets of branding success for creatives. Hey there, it's Mark Arlepage, founder of EntreArchitect, and I'm inviting you to join my friend, architect marketing expert Jeff Eccles at Build Your Brand podcast, where he explores the captivating stories of the world's top brands and transforms their lessons into powerful moves for small firm architects and creatives like you. In Season 1, Jeff shares the thrilling tale of Southwest Airlines, where he dissects their journey to the summit and distills it into strategies tailor-made for you.
It's important to keep in mind that companies like Southwest compete in the real world, just like you, and face real-world challenges, just like you. You might be surprised at how similar those challenges are to the struggles that you grapple with on a day-to-day basis.
Don't miss out on your blueprint for success. Subscribe, tune in, and let's build your brand together.
You may have noticed that the very best brands in the world are also known for having somewhat unique corporate cultures. That's often the glue that holds everything together when they encounter those rough spots.
We don't do it because it inconveniences the passengers to whom we are primarily dedicated, the short haul, frequent flyer.
Follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Your Brand today. Remember, no matter the size, the journey's the same. Your brand's journey to the top starts here.